to, we're talking about culture, but by alienating so much of the music that has been alienated in the US, isn't that alienating American culture as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And
And
I mean,
and makes no sense.
yeah. And look,
Yes.
and I think that, and this is again, this is why we wanted to come and talk about this, is I think that we are not in the mindset that people are intentionally sitting there at home being like, oh, I'm going to suppress all these things. They're not sitting around deciding intentionally to
No,
suppress these things.
no.
They, everybody in academia, we all went through a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate where we learned all of these things. We studied. I have my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate all in classical music. I
Hmm.
study classical music theory all the way through. I appreciate it. I actually really like it. It's like my puzzle. That's fun for me.
Hmm.
But it's not a tool set that my rock singers need. They need to know how to run a DAW. They need to know how to sit down with Logic and track out a song and
They
how to
also
write a song.
they also need to understand what a pentatonic scale is.
Yeah, they got to
They
also
don't
think
need
outside of
Schenkerian analysis.
right.
And
Yes,
But
yes.
so the problem is though, is that, so many people went through and never got any of the tools to help these students. So we're also kind of stuck, which is where, we're stuck in this world where we have faculty who have not been given the tools to teach this music. We have an accreditation system which requires you to have a doctorate to teach this music. And yet there's only one doctorate in the United States for voice teachers where you can go and learn how to teach whatever it is that you want to teach. And that's a Shenandoah. And it's
Yes, I
because
know. I'm
we
always
pay.
singing your praises, by
Well, I
the way.
appreciate it.
I always do.
this
I
is like a
always,
commercial.
Well, it's not,
You're
but
making
no,
this
no,
I'm
no,
not
sound
but
trying to make
like
it.
I acknowledge what you're doing
Well,
at
but
the
here's the thing, is
university.
I would like to be one of 100, just to put it on the record. I would love to
Mm,
one day be one of
yes,
100 universities, and I
yes.
hope that that one day is where we are. But it was not an easy road, and there was a lot of questions. Well, how are we going to do this? And I kept saying, we're going to do what the first music schools did and figure it out. Well, how
hmm.
are you going to evaluate a rapper who wants to get a doctorate? I don't know. We'll figure it out,
Exactly.
because that's what you do when you're trying to innovate. You figure it out as it comes. And that's hard. Academia is not set up to figure it out. Academia is set up to follow precedent. And
Mhm.
so we're lucky that I've got an amazing administration that lets us push the boundaries. And I've got amazing colleagues who look at it and who may be like, look, this isn't my thing, but I get that it's your thing. Go do it. And they
Yes.
give us permission to go play, and they vote for it, and they approve these initiatives that we want to go, and we move forward.
Mm.
And I'm just bringing that up though, because it's not easy and it doesn't happen quickly. And we can't break the system until we start creating these new degrees. Because other great people who are doing this work, there's other people that have doctorates who are teaching CCM, but they had to go and get like an education doctorate and write a dissertation on educational methods. They had to go get, other doctorate degrees without being able to go through the voice pathway to get the credential they needed to get hired in academia. And that limitation of that doctorate slows everything down for the role of progress. And that's why we're kind of like in this stalemate where we're just kind of stuck, is because we don't
Mm.
have people with the qualifications to teach the thing that I think a growing number of us realize needs to be taught. And
Well,
how do we
that's
get through
what,
that?
yeah, there's quite a number of comments that I want to make based on everything that you've just said. I'll just rattle these off and then in no particular order. But what you were talking about that was happening in New York during the Industrial Revolution was also happening in the UK. The people that were listening to this music, creating this music that was not classical music, were deemed to be savages also. So
Yep.
it's not just in the US. Uh, I'm also very fortunate to be teaching in a program at an institution where we do have CCM vocal pedagogy. In fact, my PhD was in researching CCM. And what people don't realize that are caught up in this system, in this Eurocentric hierarchy, is, and I can speak about this because of my own experiences, is that I had a fully fledged career for many years, for a number of decades, as a pop rock singer. And it was my only means of income. In fact, and I talk about this often, at one stage I was doing 11 gigs a week, and I did that for 3 months. I put my daughter through a private school education. I paid off my home. I was supporting her as a single mum. It was the only thing that I did, and I was making a lot of money. I didn't even know, as someone that was working in the industry, that this was even a thing till I went to university. So, what people need to get out of their heads is people in this world can survive without university. You don't need to have classical training to get a job, because I tell you what, if I had have gone to university and been exposed to this classical music and told that this is the only way you can train to be a singer, I would not be sitting here now. Without a doubt, I would not, because my love was, I was so passionate about pop and rock music from the age of 5. There was nothing else that existed in my world. It was not, it was just even how it made me feel. This music was just made me feel so good. It made me come to life. I was not going to sing classical music, so I would never have had the career path that I've had. And when you talk about the numbers falling across music programs in the US, obviously these programs are starting to become outdated in terms of what students are wanting. So they're not responding to the demands of music markets, the needs of students. Are the students themselves now discovering that they don't need to go there, or why are they not enrolling in these programs?
I don't know. I think it's a whole other line of research that needs to be done. I have my speculation from talking to them. And, a lot of it is that, yeah, if they go and they do their college tour and they discover that, that's their only pathway, some of them look at that and go, but I don't want to do that. And so they don't do it. For me, I come from a working class family. My dad is a factory worker. My mom was a teacher, but she was a stay-at-home mother. So, she had gone to college, but she was out of that element when I was trying to go to college myself. My grandfather was a factory worker with an eighth grade education, and him and my dad were bound and determined that I was going to college, period. So you're
Mm-hmm.
right. You don't have to have that. But when you come from a lower income family, there's something about realizing that college can be a step up the financial rung. It still proves true in the United States that a college degree earner earns, I think it's 66% more over the course of life, $1 million more. And so, that is still a thing. And so there are people like me who I was going to college one way or another, or I was moving out the day I graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going to college. I will go to college.
Yes.
And I was
Yes.
like, what are you going to major in? Well, I had a 2.6 GPA in high school, so my options were pretty much limited. 2.6, if you don't know, that's a C average. And on that
Okay.
order of a D average, it's pretty bad. And I had lots of D's and F's. I was
Hey,
not,
you
But
know
you
what?
got
You
you got
still
all kinds of
passed.
I still passed.
you got all kinds of academic awards when you got into college,
Right.
though. You did
But
well.
but I was not, there was nothing else I could do. And I was like, I've got to do music. That's my only pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was told the only pathway for me to do that was classical, and then I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'll do.
Yes.
So, but that shouldn't be our goal, to enroll people
No.
for whom they see that as their only option. And that's why we're saying we just need seats at the table. It's what you're
Right.
saying. We need room for the person for whom something else is their passion. There are still kids out there, I meet them,
And
for whom Mozart, Puccini, Verdi is the dream. That's how they communicate the human experience through
Mhm.
song.
And
And
that's
we should
okay.
lift them
it is
up.
okay.
We
It
should
is
lift
okay.
Yes.
them up. We should help educate them to the absolute best that we possibly can. But when we meet the student for whom that is not the passion, we need to start creating some other pathways for them
Yeah.
to find
And
success.
and
Mhm.
those students still exist. The students who come to school and they're told that when they get a vocal performance degree that they'll be able to sing all the things that they want to. And I met one of those students actually here at am I allowed to talk
Well,
about
I
that?
mean, yeah, I mean, it was an incoming
It was
freshman.
an incoming freshman who came in and
They had been
um
told before they got here.
that they could just sing the things that they want, and then she gets into the vocal performance degree, and I was asking, it was just it's like a forum for freshmen. And all the students meet together, and it's all the different disciplines are together. And so they split it up amongst different teachers. And in the group that this one student was in, this student was the only one that was there for vocal performance. So I said, well, of all the performances you all are going to for the semester, can you be the classical or the opera expert or specialist? And the student looks at me and says no. And I said, well, but you're here for vocal performance. And the student looks at me and says, I never sang classically before I came here. I sang in choir, but I sang a lot of pop rock. I sang R&B. I sang popular music. That's what I was singing. But I'm here in vocal performance. And I just looked at the student and I said, okay, do you want to stay in vocal performance? Like, what's the plan here? And the student says, I'm actually planning on trying to transfer into possibly it's the CMed, the commercial music degree.
Yes.
And I said, if you need help with it, I can help you try to help, like, with any of the people you need to talk to or whatever. And this student is gonna try to transfer into it, but that still happens.
Yeah, and I know
Yes.
It's still being told in high schools. Your high school choir directors are still telling their students, you can go to school for vocal performance and you'll be able to sing all the things. And that's not true. It's like telling a football player to go to basketball and you'll be able to do all the things.
And the thing is it's like this still exists, but like in our professional forums that are on social media, some of the Facebook forums that we all belong to, that population is not of that mindset. So they're not seeing it. Yet those of us who are auditioning people, they'll say, well, that's not the way that it is anymore. And I agree, in that circle, it's not so much that way anymore. But there are 30,000 voice teachers in this country, and there's only like 7,000 members of one of the forums. So there's 23,000 teachers out there, or 20,000-ish probably at least, that are not in the forum. And I meet their students when I teach workshops.
Yeah.
And they're still being told the same thing. I meet people all the time and say, well, I want to be a I want to perform on Broadway, which is why I came to your pop rock workshop for musical theater, but I'm majoring in voice performance. And I look at them and go, why are you majoring in voice performance? Because I need a classical foundation in order to have a career. And I have to tell them this is the wrong move. And it's the wrong move for lots of reasons, not just the voice. It's the wrong move because the acting style for opera is completely different than musical theater. The dance that's in the opera, which is the waltz, if you're lucky, is completely different than tap, jazz, and ballet that they need in musical theater. And the skill set they need to work through the golden age rep, the contemporary rep, and the pop rock in musical theater takes 4 years just to get started with, let alone get a degree in classical voice and then try to jump into it. So unfortunately, there's still students that are being guided down this pathway that's a pathway that's going to roadblock them. That student who tells me, well, I'm going to, and we know friends whose kids have been told this, who are then, their kids are going and majoring in classical music, they're going to struggle. I know, because I work with these people all day, every day. I know the agents and casting directors that cast these shows, and that's not what they're looking for. In fact, they don't want it. There's no room for it to them.
There seems to be two problems as far as I can figure out. One is that the teachers themselves are perpetuating the problem at hand, and that is now filtering through to some of the students as well. And I'll just give you an example of what I mean, is that my students in the popular music program are the victims of some of the backlash of this hierarchy, that they have comments made to them like, oh, you're the pop kids. Do you guys actually sing? Do you have singing lessons? And some of them heard my students. They went, oh, you guys are actually good. I went, okay. So that's got to be coming from the teaching, because at 18, these kids, they've got to have heard it from somewhere. They're the new generation coming through. The other problem is education institutions. I know you talked about that organization that creates the curricula. But even if we didn't have that problem, I know that at the moment there are only 4 institutions in the US that have CCM vocal pedagogy at a master's or a doctoral level. Is that correct?
It's
Used to
about
be
right.
3, but
Yeah.
you told me now that there's
I think
4.
it's right around 4. There may be 1 or 2
Okay.
because
Yeah.
their groups are starting to catch on.
Okay. Let's just say, even if there were 6, now you have 30,000 teachers, 6 institutions that offer training. So even if teachers are trying to do their best and they're wanting to learn more, where do they go and get that? I mean, the training is not accessible, but where are the teachers to teach them in those programs going to come from if there's no training programs? I mean,
Right.
it's
That's true.
so what comes first? Do we have to have more teachers being trained so then they can go into those programs? Do we need programs being created? It's a real dilemma, isn't
The
it?
chicken before the egg
Well,
a
it
little
is, and
bit.
that's where it is, and we need look. Things are shifting, and the younger generation of teachers, the 20 and 30-year-old teachers, there is no debate amongst them. A lot of them, there's some I'm sure there is, but a lot of the ones I meet are like, "Yeah, I need to know how to teach belters. How do I do it?" And they're ready to go.
Right.
There is no debate in their mind. They know it's time, and they know they didn't learn it, and now they want to learn it. I meet a lot of them, so I think it's a generational shift that's going to happen. I also think it's important to me, like to point out, is I know some of these teachers from different places that are of the classical mindset who would probably never come to one of our workshops, who would probably still say, I still in the core of my heart believe the classical singing is the core of everything. It's they are trying to do the best with what they were given from their teacher lineage. And that's a hard
Yes.
thing to overcome, as we see in every facet of
Right.
life. When you have
Yes.
poured your heart and soul into something for 30 years and you have seen some results from it work, you can become convinced that, yes, I know this is this. We saw this with COVID. We have people that are like, no, I swear I've never had a vaccine in my life. Vaccines don't work. I don't need them, only to go on and, die from COVID. And
Yeah.
so, this happens. So, that's where I think that we got to have good, welcoming, open, helpful conversations about this, because there's no bad person in this. It's just
No.
bad information that's been passed down since the 1800s.
Yes.
And we're in a different world now. This is not 1887. And so now that we're sitting here 140 years later, we need to start thinking about the world we live in now and using the tools we have now to help the
Mm.
singers that we have now. And
Yes.
if that's not enough motivation to help the person, the human being, the soul that is sitting in front of you, communicate their most deepest feelings through the music that means something to them, then look at our SWOT article and look at what's coming down the pike if we don't. Because
Mm.
the other thing is I also don't want any of my voice teacher colleagues, whether I know you or not, teaching in academia to become unemployed, because I grew up in a
Exactly.
family where my father was unemployed all the time because he was a factory worker. Factories laid off people all the time. It's a miserable way to grow up, and I don't want anybody else to have to go
Mm.
through that. And to
Yes.
know and to let people know, look, enrollment is falling. There is a storm coming, which is what that SWOT article is about. We're trying to share this information to not only help the students, but to help our colleagues. David and I talked about this a lot. Jackie and I have talked about it. We do not want to watch anybody go through
No.
a collapse of their program. There
Hmm.
are lots of ways that every institution, every school can adopt these things. Now, not every school is going to have a rock and roll degree. They don't have to. There's music education programs throughout this country, and the music educators need to know how to direct the musical and direct the pop a cappella group. And if that's all your school can take on because that's all you can do, and you still want to teach classical ideals because choral music has a lot of that still, that's still a better start. It's a move. We're starting to
It's a
get some
start.
exposure.
Yes.
Our music therapy programs have music therapists who work with people who are coming back from war, whose musical identity is wrapped around country music or hip hop. And
Or
they want
something
to
that's,
write
yeah.
songs. When they're writing songs to get through their PTSD, they need to write in the kind of
Music
music
that
that it
they
connects to
that's
them.
Mm.
So, another easy start is to make sure that your music therapy programs are exposing your students to the music that their clients must have in order to heal from the conditions that they're seeking a music therapist for. So it
Yes.
doesn't have to be going as radical as like we have. at Shenandoah. There are baby steps that we can take that
Hmm.
still allows room for those students who still love the classical music. And there's always going to be Juilliard, there's always going to be the Cleveland
Yeah.
Institute of Music, and
Hmm.
there's always going to be a need for those specialized opera training programs as
Yes.
well. It's not going away, but it's time
Mm.
to diversify where we can and serve the clients that we can.
And I think if ever we are going to truly have student-centered learning, we must listen to the needs of our students. And that includes what music they want to sing. So people that are saying, oh, yes, my teaching is student focused, and they're telling their students they must sing classical, they are not teaching student focused approaches. They're not using those approaches. They're still caught up in some sort of master apprentice model where you're saying, this is what you must sing. If you want to learn, this is a one size fits all, it's classical music, and this is what you've got to do. That is not student centered learning. And so, if ever we are going to completely take on that model, we have to get rid of those traditions to the point where at least we're listening to the students themselves and what they want and what their needs are. And uh, CCM styles constitute 99% of total music consumption globally. And the big problem with higher education not having training for those students is essentially you're making those students like they're not employable. And if you're a classical singer and you're going down that road of classical training, you have to be one of the 1%.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you've come
Yeah.
across these same numbers too in your
Yeah.
research, and other people are writing about this
Yeah.
and talking
Yeah.
about it.
I mean,
It's
Mm-hmm.
not just us.
no, it's
Yes. Yes. So,
Um,
I mean, that's totally unethical. Imagine doing that in a law degree, teaching something that's outdated, that you know that that part of law no longer exists. Let's just say with contracts, and you don't have anything, if it's a contract and it's to do with an artist, and you don't have a clause in there about marketing and social media, that you leave all of that out in the contract. Well,
yeah.
you have to keep updating with the marketplace, don't you? And with
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah.
The sad thing, as I know you've come across this in your research, is that there have been discussions about voice teacher licensure and certification since the early 1900s, and there's always been resistance to it. And so we're one of the only fields where there is no continuing education requirement. I mean, the dog groomer has to go get continuing education and
Yeah.
a license,
Yeah. Yes.
and
Right.
Oh my
Barbers.
gosh.
barbers to cut your hair.
Yes. Yes.
And
Mm,
so, that is, I think, a tricky part of our profession is that there is no gate. I mean, SLPs have to do it, but voice teachers don't.
mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
tricky.
it is tricky. And I love when I have a student who comes to me who's had no former training and says, "Oh, I actually teach singing at a local school." And I'm going, "But you've never had any training. You have really poor technique. You don't even you don't do anything correctly or safely or sustainably, and you're teaching singing and you're 18 years old. Imagine the damage that you could potentially be doing."
And I will say that the interesting thing is that part of what I had read about Presser too is Presser felt that there were these charlatan teachers, as I called them, like and the one dissertation I read said, think the Music Man, the musical, where Harold Hill comes in to sell all these kids instruments and then leaves town. So Presser also did notice that this was an issue. And I think that his Etude magazine, MTNA, was a step in trying to address this. So again, this is a 140-year-old problem. This
Mm.
is an issue that's been talked about for a
Well,
long time.
I also, I mean, with you had said this so beautifully about if we're doing student-based learning, right? If we're doing student-based or teaching, um, that if we're not teaching what the student wants, then it's not student led. It's teacher led.
No,
And you're
absolutely.
and that lineage. And Matt had even said too, like that's because the teachers did this, and the teacher, it's like this ancestry, and that whole thing, like the teacher is the deity. The teacher is like
The
speaking from
master.
the musical god, and who
Hmm.
is going to be leading it
Hmm.
to you. And it should be a collaboration. And I think that can be scary for teachers, for private teachers who've never done that before, or who have never had a teacher of their own who has said to them, what do you want to sing, or what do you want to do, or what are you experiencing when we're doing this? Do you like the sound that you're making? What is the sound that you actually want to make? Because I'm going to help you try to find that. I have to take a lot of judgment that I have from what my students are doing. I have to take the I don't know how to word this in a
You have to
way.
take our
Just
own
like
bias out of
I
the
can't, yeah,
picture.
my own bias. I have to take my own
Yes,
bias out of it. And I
100%.
and I think that's can be really scary for teachers who a lot of times, like how we were taught, there is it I'm going to go back to classical singing. It's a very specific sound. And also, like, when we let's I mean, I don't want to go into term talk, but we could talk about how it's CCM, how some people say, well, CCM is too broad of a term. Oh, it absolutely 100% is. CCM is a very broad term, but somebody had to create a term for it because there was not really
Yes,
a term for it, right? So
yes,
we know that
yes,
there's R&B, we know that
yes.
there's
Hmm.
country, and there's but the same thing happens in classical music. You have French melody singers. You also have early music. You have baroque singing. You have people who are really, really, really well versed in singing Verdi, and some people who are really good at singing Wagner. So I mean, it's that happens everywhere. But there's specific sounds that have to be made for those specific genres of music, and you have to know what that sound is. And you have to and you also like have to truly listen to the student and ask them what they want, ask them what they're into. What is it that you just sang this song for me? What did you like about what you did? What would you have changed? How can
Hmm.
I help you? It's not
Yes.
about me saying, you know what, you should sing this louder and higher and blah 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 blah. I mean, sometimes I have to do that, but
Hmm.
but
Oh,
for the
yes.
most part, it's really what the student
Yeah.
wants, it's student led. And
Hmm.
there
And
needs, yeah.
that's hard because a lot of our teachers that we work with were never given that opportunity
Never.
themselves.
A teacher never
Yes,
said to them,
Nobody, right?
right,
And
yes.
so you didn't have that. And so it's again, it's not anybody's fault. We are just where we are. It's not about finger pointing, but it's
no,
about acknowledging, look, let's talk about the elephant in the room. This is what is going on. We got to
Hmm.
figure a way out of this because this
Hmm.
is, not
Hmm.
helping a lot of people. There's got to be ways that if we start this dialogue that we can all start, troubleshooting together.
right.
So
Together is the
where
key.
do we start that dialogue? I mean,
Well,
do we need to check in with ourselves first? What are our biases? How
yeah.
can we do better? Then do we go and speak to other teachers? Do we form an organization? How do we create change? How do we get this movement going? Because I tell you what, I'm really keen to get it going,
I
and I'm happy to
well,
work with you to
and I
get
and
it
I think
going.
and I think that teachers want it. I think administration needs to understand what's going on too. I mean,
Yeah.
I do, and I think our administration has been really
They've been great.
good.
Yeah.
They've been great, but I don't know how many other schools are willing to hear, like, you need some contemporary stuff
Mm.
going on here. We need to.
Yes.
But I also
Well,
I also wonder too. Oh, sorry, I'll probably go on a
well, I
tangent.
was going to say, but it is also happening. Look, Nats with Alan Henderson as the executive director has
Yes.
changed in
Love Alan.
unbelievable ways. If you would have
Hmm.
told me the Nats would have made that shift from when I first was introduced to Nats as a singer, I would have been like, yeah, that'll never happen. And Alan is with all the presidents, because it's also the presidents and the boards of directors that have existed in the last 20 years. They have turned that ship in a massive direction, and they
They
deserve a lot
certainly
of
have.
credit, but they
Hmm.
only have about 7,000 members and there's 30,000 voice teacher websites. All right. There's about
Mm.
30,000 voice teacher websites. And so that's a small sliver. We have the international voice teachers, a mix. They're doing great work too. The Institute for Vocal Advancement, I think it is. They're doing great work. So there's all these groups that are doing great work. So it's, I think if anything, it's doing kind of what we're doing at the CCM Institute, which is all of us realizing we're stronger together and take down the barriers of this camp versus that camp, take down all the animosity that may have existed in the past between this pedagogical method and this pedagogical method, and all of us work together to be like, look, the goal is to communicate the human experience through song, and that's what we're all trying to help other people do.
Hmm.
So how do you do it? This is how I do it. Why do you do it that way? Oh, this is why I do it that way. And us
Hmm.
start having an open mind to have these conversations so we unite, because I still think there's a
Yes.
little bit too much of, well, that's not the right way to do it. Well, maybe
Oh,
let's just
yes.
talk
You
about
only
it
have to
instead.
read the forums on social media. There's still people who have a lot to say on those forums, and underlying passive aggressive. I don't comment on those forums. I advertise my podcast on there, but I
Yeah.
don't comment. I'm still scared. I'll speak on this platform, but I'm scared to pipe up on those forums.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's, and again, though, that is the system. The system used to be very much that way because in academia, this is how it's done,
Well,
which again comes to
which is,
Etude magazine.
but this is a,
Yes.
That's
but
the
I mean,
roots.
are we allowed to talk about what that is?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean,
About
because
NASM.
I also, I,
Well, can I
I
just
don't like,
say
I
something?
just have, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, all I was going to say is I'll make this really quick. I'll let you say what you have to say. Is that you, both of you, and myself are in a position of privilege where we are able to speak up because
Yes,
of where we're working. My
yes,
university is supporting the work that I'm doing. Your university is supporting the work you're doing. I know there are a lot of teachers who are scared to speak up for fear of losing their jobs. And I
absolutely.
kind of feel that we have a responsibility then in our place of privilege to start making some noise for
Yes,
change,
yes,
because we're not going to lose our jobs. In
yes,
fact, our universities are going to be happy about us speaking up.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally
It
agree.
is.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's the, we were talking about, NASM, our school withdrew from NASM. NASM, the National Association of Schools of Music, the accrediting body, about 3 years ago, our university said enough, and we withdrew because we knew that NASM was holding us back.
And I think that NASM's holding a lot of people.
And
I
so
mean,
a
I'm
lot,
going to say it loud. I really do. I think
and
accreditation
I
can
don't,
get,
and if somebody is part of NASM and you're going, then that's not the case, then we need to do a better job of explaining what the standards actually mean. Because what I've witnessed at my schools is that here's the NASM standards. Our last review, we were told this, so that we better do. And usually it was something that was outdated that we needed to be, be doing, that we're sticking to because we're afraid that if we don't do that by the next NASM review, it's going to be an issue. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you look at their standards, they have no standards for popular music degree programs. Now, they'll say, well, you can suggest a program or create one. That's great. So we have a blank slate that we don't know if you're even going to like, that you may not even approve. So you want me to do all of the hundreds of hours of work to propose something to which you might look at and go, nah, I'm not sure about that.
but
That's the
Yes.
problem when
yeah.
they do not have standards, when they have not put in the work to form standards for what commercial music integration looks like at the academic level. It leaves everybody in limbo land where they're hesitant to try to take this beast on because they don't know if it's going to get approved.
Right.
They don't know how it's going to affect their next review, and they feel stuck.
Yeah.
And so that's where I also,
It's,
that's holding
and
us
it's
down.
that too. I mean, and I would need to look into this, but I feel, do we, do we know what the people who are doing the accreditation, do we know what their musical focus has been in their lives? Is
Well,
it
it's
usually
everybody
classical
who's,
music,
it's a
or
lot
is
of
it
times is it's people who are running programs, so they're all classically trained
classically trained?
musicians.
And then
Mm.
the other thing too, if we want to talk about going down the pipeline, I I I teach private lessons. I used to only teach private lessons to middle school and high school students. I don't do contests. I don't do competitions. It's just something. It's a that's another talk for another day. But
Yes.
but there are solo and ensemble contests, and I don't. I'd have to know. I don't help with these things, and I don't know if this still happens. But back in the day, and at least probably 5 to 10 years ago, the only things that you could sing for solo and ensemble contests for your county, your district, your state, whatever, it was always something that was classical, usually in a foreign language. And so, if we want to talk about making change, I don't think that change can just happen in higher education.
No.
I think it needs to happen in private schools. I know that my kids go to a private elementary school where they are singing a lot of popular music. They're singing songs
Mm.
that they want to sing, which is great. But I don't
Yes,
know
they
what that
do
like
here in
for
Australia.
good. And I don't, but I also don't know what happens in the middle schools and high schools. I'll find that out next year when my kid goes to middle school. But I also
Mhm.
don't think it's the teacher's fault. It's probably what is being told, that the teacher has to teach in choir. Do you have to
Yeah,
sing Latin? Do you have to
curriculum.
sing the curriculum? So I mean,
Mm.
Well,
I think giving students a wide variety of music to be able to sing, but also learning how to teach it too,
and
you know.
what's interesting is that the music educators, so the people, so in the United States, if you major in music education, that you're looking at, our K through 12 system, which is basically from the age of 5 to the age of 18.
Same as
Research,
ours.
okay,
Okay.
yeah. So researchers in that field have been very progressive for a very long time, dating back to this Tanglewood symposium that happened in the
No, that's
1960s,
right. Yeah.
and they have been pushing for this. But again, the issue is that when you work in academia and you want to make curricular changes at the academic level, it has to go through academic cabinet and all of these other things where it has to be voted on by the entire faculty. Now, at Shenandoah, when we put things through for an entire faculty vote, my colleagues are super supportive. They vote and approve what they know we think is best to move. We all do it for each other, but not all schools are that way. And
No.
so it's very easy at other schools for faculty who really do not want to see this change happen to vote things down or to otherwise roadblock. So there, there are a lot of us out there. There are a lot of us out there in our little pockets trying to make things happen. It's just when you look at the big picture and you see these stories, you meet these people who
Yeah.
are being told these things, that you start to realize, wow, we can't just sit back and go, well, things are much better now. It feels like it when I'm in my group of people, when I'm surrounded by my CCM
Right.
Institute faculty, when
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by people at my conferences I go to, I'm like, wow, our world is getting much better. And then I meet a
Mm.
high school student at a recruiting event, and I'm like, nope, nope, no, actually,
They're
nope,
still,
we
yeah.
still got work to do. And
Yes.
so, but I think that, there are a lot of people who deserve credit. Music therapy people the faculty members have been really progressive because they know that's the only way they can help their clients. You can't help a client with Caro Mio Ben when trying to write a song about their post-traumatic stress
I mean, you can.
from war.
That's a choice,
You can, but it's
but
not going to work. It's not going to connect with the
It's
client. It's not going to help them.
no, it wouldn't help my stress levels. It would
me
No.
it
neither.
would
And
make mine peak.
there was research done that looked at the first 6 months of music therapists' careers and how many of them get vocal pathologies that sideline them. That it is a
Mm.
significant percentage of music therapists end up with an injury in their first 6 months of practice because they're not being taught how to sing the kind of stuff that they're going to sing once they're actually in the clinic. And
Yes.
so we're
Yes.
failing those
Wow.
students. We're literally doing
Yes.
something that's leading to physical harm. And
Hmm.
that's where, like, when I sit back and go, okay, so do I come out and talk about this or do I just keep it to myself? I feel like I have no choice but to talk about it because we have
Yes.
people that are literally getting hurt. And when people are becoming physically injured because they are not given the tools to do the thing that their heart's desire is, what they feel like they have to do, it's their calling, and we got to figure out how to help. And
Yeah.
that's why these conversations I just think are so
Yeah.
critical, even though they're tough, even though they stir up controversy,
Yeah.
even though, it can lead to some hard conversations. We got to start having them because there's too many people that are getting left behind. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing as educators. We're
No.
supposed to be figuring out how to lift
No.
everybody up.
Exactly, exactly. Look, I'm going to start winding this up. You two have been so generous with your time, and you have children that are watching a movie, so you could talk to me.
I know.
And
I almost forgot we had kids.
Yeah, I know. They may be asleep. We'll find out here in a little bit.
I forgot about the kids, and they're probably eating all the popcorn in the house, plus all the lollies, everything. They probably had pillow fights, and there's feathers everywhere, but that's all good. Okay, so in wrapping up, any piece of advice you would like to share with our voice community?
I need a piece of advice. Listen to your student. Let your student tell you what they need and what they want, and just and literally and listen to. Another really cool thing to do is ask them to create a playlist of maybe 10 to 15 songs that they feel like they really love, maybe something that they would like to sing someday, or things that really speak to them. And listen, really listen to them, and also
Mhm.
listen to your student. Um and if you're, if you're somebody at a university who wants this change, I don't know. I guess they could reach out or whatever,
Yeah,
but
reach
but
out. I
but
mean,
also, like, contact your administration and let them know that you're not the only school that wants this. That there's schools that are making this happen, and we're
Mhm.
doing it. I mean, we're living proof, and our administration has listened, and we're making a lot of students professionals now, and they're singing the way that they want to sing.
and
They
they're
didn't start out singing one way and then get molded into singing a different way. They're
Yes.
and they're
doing it.
not.
Likewise.
And the biggest thing is too that I'm always shouting from the rooftops. They're not getting hurt.
No.
We do not have any new vocal injuries that are not related to something outside of our control. So what I mean by that is we had a student who had COVID and who coughed himself into a vocal hemorrhage. You can't prevent that. That is
No,
not
that's
through her
different.
singing. She had
Yes.
COVID and it was real bad and she got a hemorrhage. We
Mhm.
had a student who had a cyst in high school who came to us and who was doing really, really well until they got really, really sick. Everything flared up from the flu and from some other emotional stress and what was muscular tension dysphonia. And when they saw a surgeon, the surgeon's like, we should maybe just take care of this now at this point in time. And they did. But those are the kinds of things we deal with.
Mhm.
I don't have new
Mhm.
cases of nodules showing up
No.
because
None.
we teach the kids the thing they want to do. When I came
Mhm.
here, there was a lot of kids with nodules, and I was like, why? Well, they weren't teaching them to belt for the first 2 years. So my first year here, I'm walking down the hallways and I hear screaming.
Yelling. Yes.
Oh,
And I'm going, who is this kid screaming? And I'd go look in the window and it's a freshman. I'd go look in the window and it was a sophomore. And I'm like, well, the kids have nodules because we're not teaching them to belt and they're teaching themselves to belt. Because I saw kids in a room together trying to teach each other.
mhm.
And I remember I was in a faculty meeting and I was like, that's the reason they're getting hurt. It's not because belting's inherently bad. It's
Mhm.
because
It's
we don't
because they,
help them for
yeah.
2 years and they're
Yes.
going to do it
Yes.
whether we want them to or not.
Yeah.
And everybody
Mm.
looked at that and they're like, you know what, you're right. And I was like, can we do an experiment and teach them to belt from their freshman year? And you know what? When we did, the rate of vocal pathologies plummeted to nothing.
Yeah.
Because
Of
all of a
course.
sudden, the kids were getting the help that they needed for the thing they
Mhm.
wanted to do. And my
Mhm.
colleagues are great teachers.
Mhm.
They were able to help them. So it's just, it's these little changes. My little piece of parting advice is, or, thought is be the teacher you needed in that moment.
Yeah.
Not the teacher you
Yeah.
had, but the teacher
Teacher
you
you
needed.
needed.
So when
Love
you have
that.
that student who's standing in front of you who's saying, but my heart's really drawn to this song, and you're listening to that song and you're going, I hate this song. This is not for
Mm.
me.
Mhm.
Be the
Mhm.
teacher you needed when you were in that kid's shoes and say, you know what? I'll
Let's
figure
do
out
it.
how to help you. Let's figure it out and
That's
figure it out
amazing.
together. When you have
Brilliant.
that student who's in emotional distress, and you remember your teacher who from Etude magazine, their lineage goes back to Etude magazine, where they tell you how to discipline your students and how to get your students to snap into shape, who was harsh to you, who said, well, you just need to suck it up and you just need to learn how to deal because this is just the business,
Emotions are on outside the door.
right? Don't be that teacher. Be the teacher you needed in that moment and help your student
Amazing.
figure out how to deal with their emotional distress. Refer them out if it's not something that you can help with, but be the person who's there for them. Because when we do that, then we cultivate artists. We cultivate human beings who have something they can share with others. There's something important that they want to say, and we're going to make the world a better place. And the dream is to have institutions where there's a reason to go to an institution. And the reason you go to an institution is because you, as a singer-songwriter, get to be surrounded by symphonic musicians who change your thought about the way that you write backing instruments into your songs. Because you're surrounded by dancers who make you rethink how movement might be a
Yes.
part of your concerts. Because you're surrounded by the musical theater kid who tells stories in a really deeply connected way that makes you rethink how you might tell your breakup story, so that then when you go and put on your final culminating performance, you have all kinds of elements that you would have never have come up with on
Mhm.
your own in your own bedroom without the influence of all of those other artists surrounding
Exactly.
you. And that is the conservatory of the future. The conservatory of the future is the place where all of these
All of it.
cultural heritages come together and we dump artists from all different backgrounds together and say, make something happen. And they create things that we can't even imagine right now because we don't have enough multicultural institutions. If you want to see where the potential can be and where it can go watch the performances of students from Berkeley, because Berkeley is already doing this.
I spent a week at Berkeley.
Stuff.
Yes, I
And
love their
isn't
program.
it?
Yes,
They're
yes,
making incredible
absolutely.
music. Because that's
They
what
are.
happens when you honor all cultural heritages. You teach people the music that they want to learn, and you lift them up and help them succeed.
Yes, I have a student that's coming into my program next year. I teach across all 3 years in the Bachelor of Popular Music program. And I have 2 internationals. One is from Norway and a boy from Greece who wants to sing he wants to put a modern twist into some of the traditional music. So I'm highly excited by that. I keep you posted as to how that's going to turn out.
Yeah.
But look, thank you so much. We're going to share the links to all your work. You have books, so I have one of your books, the rock and roll book.
Thank you.
I have your paper, but I'm going to share the links to all your work in the show notes for our audience to go and follow you up and look at what you're up to next. And I feel that we need to regroup at some stage and see if there's any shifts happened or if there's anything that you want to talk about further. I would love to have you back. This has been truly fascinating and I appreciate you. Keep up the amazing work.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about this. This is the first time we've dived this deep in a public forum about this information. We're going to start trying to do some more with it because it needs to get out there, but we really appreciate the opportunity to get the conversation started.
You know what? Anytime, I'm up for it, and you can go as deep as you want here.
Thank you.
It's all good. Thank you so much. And you better go and check on those kids.
I know. I hear water running upstairs, so it makes me a little nervous.
So take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.